Oh wow, cool. A LS1 F body. Well, I don't know. Is it an LS1? It could be a V6. Oh. Yep, it's an LS1. Oh, that's cool. I wonder what's under here. Well, she's definitely a little dusty, but this is my 99 Pontiac Trans Am. It has very low mileage. Not a WS6. The wheels on it are Corvette replicas, but they're the right size for an F body. So they're 18-inch front and back. They're the correct offset. I'm running 285s in the back and 265s in the front. A lot of these cars are in really rough shape. Seeing one this clean, well, that's actually why I have two of them. So I originally bought that car. This is a 2001 Firebird Formula, also a 6-speed. I originally bought this car in New Jersey when I still lived there, and I shipped it out here. And the day I shipped it, not even kidding, the day I shipped it, I found that one. At this point, this car had 150,000 miles on it. It now has almost 170,000 miles on it. But I picked this up the day this arrived on the shipping. So paint's a little beat up on this, you know, higher mileage, but it's a good running 6-speed car. I'm gonna cold start and drive both of them. This one's filthy. I drive it all the time. This one stays under cover. I really don't. So give you guys a closer tour here. So, yep, this is a very clean, well kept. The leather's soft. Even with that being said, it does still have a couple cracks on the dash. It's kind of unavoidable in these. And the door panels are cracked. That kind of happens to all these. But here, let me give you a cold start, because this does the only modifications on this. It has a lid. I'll pop the hood for you guys, but it has a lid and a Magnaflow axle-back exhaust. So let me find a good place to put this down. So yeah, finding one of these that's clean, and what I mean by clean is the quarter panels aren't all jacked up, the doors don't sag. I mean, the doors close smooth. Just the fact that this is smooth, I'll show you on my other higher mileage example. This thing's never been hit, never been wrecked. Very rare on these cars. And the reason being is because they're a ton of fun and they were super cheap for a long time. So, yep, see, doors don't sag. Seat isn't ripped up. All the padding's still there. Here, let's pop the hood. But yeah, low mileage on this one, 62.9. Very clean car. So I'll go over some of the options and stuff. Most notable missing option on this car is the WS6 package. So what is the WS6? Well, WS6 would give you the dual nostril hood, scoops. It's supposed to give you different sway bars and a slightly different exhaust. and different wheels. The sway bars are exactly the same. GM was not producing different sway bars. I mean, you can measure it yourself. They were the exact same thickness. The hood, matter of personal preference. But yeah, this car is all stock, very clean. It does have a lid. That's the only modification. But, yep. All stock, not much to see here. Since this is a 99, it has the old style LS1 intake manifold. You'll see the difference on my 2001 shortly, but yeah. The airbox is shorter on the non-WS6s, so this sits an inch taller on a WS6 model. Like there's air inlet right here, but it doesn't actually draw air from the hood one way or another. They draw air from below on all these, so there really is no performance advantage for the WS6. A lot of people swear by it though. They love the hood. I personally don't. So when I bought this car, it came with a WS6 hood, painted and everything, and I took it off. I put the stock one back on. I like the flat hood better, but you know, I'm a weirdo. So, yep, it has cross-drilled and slotted brakes. They're power stops on all four corners. Bridgestone Potenza Sports. I also have the Potenza Sport on my Formula. This is a set of wheels with the RE71 RS, the 200 treadwear version. That's even more intense, but these are a 300 treadwear summer tire. They do awesome. This thing dead hooks. I'll take you guys for a drive here in a second, but yep. Okay. Yeah, so to give you a better tour of the interior, every one you look at is gonna have the door panel cracked right there. All of them. If it doesn't, it will crack. It's just a terrible design. Getting in. It's hard to see, but it also has a crack in the dash right there. Can't even see it when you're driving. Can't even tell. And a small crack right here. That is nothing compared to what these normally look like, as you'll see in a second. But yeah, let's get the lights on in here. Everything lights up red in these. It's really cool. T-tops. This one did not come with shades, so let's take a second to talk about the equipment. So these seats are heavily bolstered, and you actually sit up higher than you might think. They're 12-way adjustable, adjustable bolstering. Obviously the backrest, the front and back angle, the headrest, and even the sides. You can adjust both lumbar and how much bolstering you get, which is, you know, for the time, these were really impressive seats, especially coming out of GM. GM had some horrible seats in C5 Corvettes. I mean, some of the worst seats ever. Even in the Z06s have just awful seats. These seats are very comfortable. And it has a surprising amount of cargo room. It's a pretty practical car. But, so this is a 99 Trans Am. And again, I said not a WS6. Well, one of the other things it doesn't have is a Hirsch shifter. So this is the just factory. It's a pretty long throw. It's still a T56 transmission. The transmission didn't change, but the shift throws on this are quite long. I mean, that's first, second, third, fourth, fifth. Well, that's fine. It doesn't want me to go in sixth. I mean, I am parked. Okay, well, sixth is there, I promise. There's sixth. Sixth. Fourth. Sixth. It keeps trying to back out and go into the reverse gate, but yeah. First, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, reverse. There was a Hirsch shifter option, which actually my Formula has, which is pretty interesting because the Trans Am was the highest trim. They're all Firebirds. Trans Am was the highest trim. The fact that this didn't have options like the T-top shade covers that car does have, or the Hirsch shifter, which that car does have, or the upgraded stereo, which that car does have, it's just kind of interesting. But yeah, we will take this one for a drive. I don't drive it enough, so let me grab a couple things and I'll be right back for you. All right, let's take this thing for a drive. So it's kind of funny, these things were panned for having horrible visibility when they came out. They're like a fishbowl today compared to anything. Now, the view out the back 3/4 is bad, all right? It is, but it's nothing compared to a modern car. I mean, these things are downright, this would have some of the best visibility of any sports car sold today. But at the time, these things were slammed for having horrible visibility. The other thing they were slammed for is those long doors, as you already saw, saying that they were impractical. I mean, yes, they are annoying in a parking lot, but as annoying as they are, they're great once you get them open because you can access the back seat pretty easily and everything like that. So, okay, that was weird. Some people, it's 105 degrees here in Salt Lake, and they were standing in the middle of the parking lot. There's places I'd rather be, like the pool right there, but you know, okay. But there's really no place I'd rather be than in any of my cars. Okay, so one of the things you might notice, especially when you watch this back to back with my other car, is the gearing is a little bit different. So the speedo is showing one thing. The speedo's not accurate in this car, by the way. So you guys have seen the outside, you've seen the inside. The thing's never been painted, it's never been hit. It does actually have a salvage title, though. Kind of funny story there. I bought this from the owner of. I'm not gonna post the VIN number here. I don't want anyone to get in trouble. I mean, I'm pretty sure we're past the statute of limitations, but. I bought it from a gentleman who used to own a Pontiac dealership. I bought it from the son. The father has now passed, so I'm sure, you know, I'm at liberty to talk about this, but this car has a salvage title. And the reason it has a salvage title is because he claimed it flooded. Now, did it flood? I saw pictures of the damage. I mean, there was some water around the back, so they changed the fuel tank, they changed the rear axle, they changed the exhaust, and all the rear suspension components. Was it really flooded? Was it truly flooded? Not exactly. But when they did change it, they put the 308 rear end in from the automatics. Typically these have a 342 rear end. So this has 308 gears. So this says I'm going 50. I'm really going about 65, 70 right now. The speedo is way off in this car. Yeah, just cruising down the interstate, and again, I'm not going 55. The speed limit's 55 here, and yeah, I should bring up GPS on another device. When this says 55, you're actually going about 70. It's kind of scary, because these already had pretty long gearing to begin with, but now that this thing has super long gearing, first goes to above 60 now, and second goes to about 90 with the 308 gears that are in here. So, yeah, drives a little different than my other one, but yeah, these cars are comfortable. They're smooth, they're quiet, they make great long distance cruisers. You'll hear all the time that an LS1 will get 30 miles a gallon on the highway with the T56 transmission. That's not exactly true. I mean, a Corvette with no options, a coupe, not a convertible, maybe will get 30 on a long trip because it's a little bit lighter and a little bit more aerodynamic. You usually get around 26 to 28, which is still really good. And the gearing is insanely long. So I'm in third right now, fourth. Here, we can get around these people here. I don't know what's going on here. Fifth. And then sixth. So sixth, and again, this speedometer is indicating if it had 342 gears, but you can tell why these things get such good fuel economy. Even at 80 miles an hour, the the speedo reads under 2,000 RPM, and it's accurate. So they're fuel efficient, they're fun, and I think these cars are kind of underappreciated. It's crazy because they are rising in value now, but all things considered, these cars are greatly underappreciated because they were so cheap and they made so many of them. You used to be able to get these things really cheap. I mean, if you paid more than 10 grand in any condition for a 98 to 2002 F body, people thought you were crazy. That's not the case anymore. The values are going up. I think people are starting to appreciate these a little bit more, but the bottom line is these perform just as good as a Supra or a 300ZX or a 3000 GT or an RX-7. Actually, I'm going to take it a step further. They perform better. These things are faster. Everyone makes fun of the solid rear axle, and it is out of a Chevy S10. It's a 7.5-inch ring gear, and it does have problems, okay? But it works for hooking. And again, this car is, you know, this is my cruiser. I don't really beat this one up. The other drive will be more exciting in the black one, I promise. But yeah, these cars performed. I mean, they ran low 13s. Some people were even cracking high 12s out of the box, which in the late 90s, that was cooking. 0 to 60 was well under 5 seconds. Yeah, and they handle really well. They have a double wishbone front suspension, and the front suspension actually has more in common with, like, well, looking at it, it looks like something Japanese. It really doesn't have much in common with anything else in the GM family. And they have the panhard bar out back, which they actually handle a lot better than you'd think for a couple reasons. They don't weigh that much. Now, the Trans Ams are the heaviest. They've got these crazy seats. That big wing out back actually weighs an additional 42 pounds over just the wing alone weighs that over the non-spoiler hatchback. So these weren't exactly designed to save weight. These are around 3,500 pounds. My Formula is around 3,250. So yeah, it's about a 200-pound weight difference between the two. So yeah, and the Trans Ams, they're also heavier because they have the heaviest wheels. They have that different front end with the fog lights, and the pop-up headlights actually weigh a bit more. So the Camaros are the lightest of these years. The 4th gen Camaro weighs substantially less, depending on trim. I mean, the top trim Camaro versus Trans Am, it is substantial. The top trim Camaro's a couple 100 pounds lighter. Now, a Firebird Formula, like my black one, compared to a top trim Camaro, is about the same weight. And with the pop-up headlights, the Pontiac ones are a little bit more aerodynamic. We're really splitting hairs here, though. They're all the same car. Yep, but this one's quiet, it's smooth, it's tight. You might notice a couple little squeaks and rattles. That's very normal for these. They weren't exactly known for their rigid qualities. But yeah, surprisingly, these ones are pretty tight and well kept, but yeah, just to highlight the shift throw difference again, it's insane how long these throws are on this one. I've had 5 or 6 of these cars over the years. I've never had one that didn't have the Hurst shifter. This is a very oddly equipped car, but yeah, this has the 308 gears. I need to change that and put the correct 342s at least, if not some 373s or 410s in here, because the gearing is obscenely long in this. Yeah, I'm not even gonna bother doing much of a pull just because, like I said, this car's really clean, it's really nice. I don't need to beat on it. I have one to do that with. This one I take to car shows. You know, we go and get ice cream. I just fool around in it. I don't drive this one terribly hard. But yeah, these things make awesome cars for what most people do with their, you know, classic or weekend or, you know, just toy car. What most people do is they cruise down the interstate, they run a couple errands, they might go to a car show or two, and they might do a couple acceleration pulls, right? You can still find these for... Now, the rougher ones are around that 10 grand mark now, and the nice ones are you know, 20, 25 for a really nice one. So they're getting back up there in price, but compared to a Supra or a 300ZX or an RX-7, and you know, all the cars that at least I grew up really idolizing and wanting, I never really wanted one of these. I liked them from afar, but I never really wanted one. I knew they performed awesome. I mean, I knew firsthand. A couple of friends had them. They always performed great. I love the removable roof with the T-tops. And I even love how much cargo room they have. They're a decently practical vehicle, pretty reliable. But you know, looking back at it now, these things really did perform just as good as the complicated, you know, twin turbos and all-wheel drive systems like the 3000 GT had. You really didn't need all that crap. I mean, GM was onto something with these, and it's a shame that this was the last F body, because the platform, yes, it was aged and dated, but that's kind of the charm of this. This is like a brand new old car, for lack of a better term. So the chassis and the hard points and everything on here date back to the original Camaros and Firebirds. And it kind of feels like that. You still have hydraulic steering. You still have a shift lever that's directly connected right into the transmission. There's no linkage or anything weird like that. You still had a throttle. You still had, there's no electric throttle in this. And it still feels, a bit large and cumbersome, which it feels like a muscle car. This really was the last traditional muscle car. The other stuff, don't get me wrong, newer vehicles outperform this easily, new Camaros, Mustangs, Challengers even, but they don't have that same, solid rear axle, just big American muscle car feel. So another cool thing is you can see that wing at all times out the back. So yeah, well, let's put this one away and we'll talk more about driving in my black one. Okay, so now we're going to talk more about the formula, but real quick, let's walk through the differences, right? Taillight's the same. Exhaust would have been slightly different from the factory if that was a WS6, but since that was just a regular Trans Am, would have the same rectangle exhaust there. Spoiler, completely different. This is just a flat, this is the same as the V6 cars, so it's integrated, it doesn't rise up. It's known as the low-rise spoiler, and that is the high-rise spoiler. So, pretty obvious the difference there. 16-inch wheels. Actually, this was not a WS6, so this would have had the same 16-inch wheels on all four corners. There's 16x8, 245/50 16s. Obviously the badging formula, Trans Am, that's the same. Front bumper's completely different. So, this has marker lights right there, fog lights in the middle. The way this is set up, this has marker light, fog light right next to each other. Just a less aggressive design. Again, hood's the same because this is a formula. Now, you can just tell by the paint. You can tell by this right here. If you're looking to buy one of these cars, if the quarter panel's a little uneven like that, it's kind of funny why that happens. And clear coat issues. A lot of these, this is what a typical one is going to look like. And the side molding just fell off pretty recently. I mean, little things like that. Yeah, see, this one's not beat up too bad, but those quarter panels, that's not from hitting anything. That's from it buckling. The structure buckles when you drive these things hard, and most people do drive these things pretty hard. They're a lot of fun to drive, but yeah. Here, let's get you a cold start on this one. Now this one also has similar mods. It has the lid. There's a stock exhaust. It's surprising because it's actually a little bit louder than the exhaust on that one, despite it being stock. I have a suspicion that this car is cammed. It's not a very aggressive cam, but the way it pulls up top, it's either cammed or it's the best running Trans Am I've ever been in, because this thing really moves. So, interior differences. So this door panel is cracked under here. This guy the company sells leather covers, and somebody covered it at one point. This window did leak, and it did get a little ruined, but again, I drive this car. So, these seats, completely different. They're not adjustable in any way. Bolsters don't adjust, lumbar doesn't adjust. You still can get up and down angle, but that's it. So these are the base seats. Now, stepping in, you actually sit quite a bit lower in these seats than in my other car. So I have this dash cover here that actually lives on that one usually, but yeah. So this dash, first glance, doesn't look too bad, and then you look at it and go, holy crap, it's cracked any and everywhere. So significant cracking there. But this car did have T-top shades, and this is a black interior. That's a gray interior. Black was only on the 2001 and 2002s. Yeah, and it doesn't have tinted windows. That car does have tinted windows, but this actually has an upgraded stereo compared to the other one. And it has traction control. That car does not have traction control. It's a very simple on-off, the traction control. But even with it on, you can fool around pretty good. One thing this car does have is the Hurst shifter. Now that is not the original shift knob. This is from a company called GR. I'll put a link in the description. This is a very high quality leather shift knob. It fits perfectly. It's actually for people who swap T56s into Supras. So it's a 4th gen Supra shift knob. But yeah. That's just my traction control I turned off there. So yeah, actually, this has more miles than I even remembered. 173,000 miles on this one. But yeah, black interior. Let's close that. That's a little distracting. But yeah, black interior compared to the gray. This does have the Hurst shifter, you know, besides the knob. So shift throws are shorter. 3rd, 4th. That's reverse. 5th, 6th. 1st, 2nd. Significantly shorter. So, yep. The shifter feel is great on this. I really do love driving this car. I mean, I love driving both of them, but I prefer driving this one. Yeah. The lighter seats. The rear hatch is a lot lighter. Here, let's pop the hood here. Somebody put those aftermarket pedals on. I didn't do that. The guy was really obsessed with red. Every light in here is red, like there's like a little marker light here. It's hard to see now, but that's red. He changed everything out for red lighting to kind of match the theme, which is cool. But yeah, and you know what? I didn't show you guys on the other one, so might as well show you the cargo room. Always got to keep oil with you. Yeah, had a cargo cover. These things are pretty practical, all things considered. I mean, even with the T-tops in, you can fit a ton of stuff with the seat. I've had a 6-foot mirror in here, and it fits. I've had sets of wheels. I actually had these are Hummer EV wheels that are going on my Suburban. The new Hummer EVs went back to the old bolt pattern, but yeah. And those are another set of wheels for this car. I mean, if you're a car guy, you know, you got wheels just lying around everywhere, but you can just tell right when you pick up this hatch compared to that one. This one flies right up. That one has new struts, and you still got to help it up. So the weight is apparent there. It's a lot easier to record videos when you hit record, in case anyone's wondering. But yeah, let's take this one for a spin. You might immediately notice how much brighter it is in here without tinted windows. The back window's tinted on these, not from the factory. But when I say these, I mean both of mine. Without the back window tinted, this thing really is a fishbowl. It gets insanely hot. But yeah, got traction control off. It never really intervenes. I just don't like it, so I turn it off. You know, that's kind of the fun of these cars. They're very, you know, mechanical and connected. Yeah, something like traction control just kind of, you know, spoils that. So why do I like these cars? Why do I have two of them? Well, I really wanted another Supra. I had a couple third-gen Supras. I loved them. I really wanted a fourth-gen Supra. Always have, still do. Why didn't I go with the fourth-gen? Well, they're 80, 90 grand. At the time, these were cheap. I paid $5 for this 5, 6 years ago, and there's nothing wrong with it. The paint wasn't even anywhere near what it looked like now. It was actually relatively clean at the time. But yeah, I drive it. And if you like driving, these cars drive incredible. They drive, like I said, they drive just as good as the Japanese Legends that you really thought you wanted. And it's a 2+2. It's got over 300 horsepower. It's got a 6-speed manual. The roof comes off, and you could still get one of these for 8 to 10 grand instead of 80 to 100 grand. To me, the choice is pretty obvious. They don't weigh as much as you'd think. Like I said, if you get a Formula or a Z28 Camaro, they weigh less than the Japanese ones. Yeah, and they're fun to drive. So yeah, I'm a big fan here. We'll take this one. This one, like I said, I drive this one a little bit differently than my other one. So let's just make sure the coast is clear before we go too crazy here. Looks good to me. A lot of fun. A lot of fun. But again, then you could go to 5th, you can go to 6th, and you can just cruise. And again, at 80, look at that, you're below 2,000 RPM. So I'm a big fan of these cars. I think they're a ton of fun. They make really good torque. They're pretty reliable. The ones that, you know, you're probably going to be finding aren't going to look like my red one. If you find one like that, you're going to pay for it. And at that price, I don't think it's worth it. I think if you pay more than, I don't know, 10, 15 grand, 15 grand is really the cutoff where there's a lot better performing cars out there for the money. Namely, actually in GM's own stable, you're a lot better off going with the Corvette at that point. Now, if you can still find one of these for cheap, which again, it's difficult, but they're out there. If you can, this is the way to go, because it gives you 90% of the performance of even modern cars for no money. And it's reliable, it's simple, there's really no downside. So I'm a big fan of the 4th gen. That's why I own 2 of them. I have one to drive, one to keep really nice. Yeah. And you can drive it every day. It's an LS1. The parts are, you know, working on it is not the easiest thing in the world, especially with a couple of the, you know, doing spark plugs is no fun in these. The older cars are even worse. The LT ones that they put in these, doing spark plugs is an all weekend, and you know, you're going to lose friendships over it. It is a nightmare. This takes 3 or 4 hours. So little things like that are kind of annoying because the engine is so set back so far. But you know, basic maintenance is really easy on this. There's really nothing to break. Maybe the rear axle, and that's about it. Yeah. And what's really funny is everybody, you know, says that these things were mullet mobiles and whatever, and they've got their own opinions, but you know, you can't deny it's got a T56, it has an LS1, it's around 3,300 pounds, give or take. You really can't go wrong. Like, what's really funny is people will swap these motors into Japanese, like a 240SX, and when they're done, okay, maybe it's a couple 100 pounds lighter, but it's not enough to really matter. I think you should just start with one of these. That's just my opinion, though. So, yeah. Well, I'm going to drive it back, and hopefully that explains why I have 2 of these. If it doesn't, you know, maybe I'm just crazy, but that's an option, too. I mean, I do have a tracker as well, so here we go. just some more thoughts while I'm cruising. I mean, the torque is incredible on this. I'm in 6th, going up a hill at a mile above sea level, and it pulls. I mean, you put the foot down and it still goes in 6th, which is a double overdrive gear. It still pulls hard. So the torque is amazing. The feel is great on these. Now, a lot of these things at the time were, you know, they weren't the most communicative car in the world, but it's still hydraulic steering, direct, you know, shift linkage. You can see it bounce around, and, you know, it's just very positive and connected. Throttle cable, which is awesome. And you could stuff some serious tire on this car. So this is with 245s on all 4 corners, and it's still dead hooks. I have another set of 295s that fit on all 4 corners. You could fit up to 315s on all 4 corners on an F-body without cutting or modifying anything. So from a, you know, how much rubber you can put on the car perspective alone, these things are incredible. Yeah. So, yeah, you can fit a lot of rubber. You get a legendary, you know, powertrain. There really is no downside to these cars besides the build quality. The build quality is awful, okay? It just is what it is. It was awful when they were new, and time hasn't been great to them. So if you're looking for something that's, you know, the tightest, well-built, you know, it's not this car. But if you look past those shortcomings, and I think at this point, you kind of have to, because every car from, you know, the 90s is going to have a little bit of a ratty interior. At the time, this was panned for having a horrible interior. You drive it now and go, okay, it's an old 90s car. Like, you know, they all kind of feel similar, but yeah, the torque is just great. I mean, you don't even need to rev it out, and it just goes. It's just a really fun car to cruise around in. And for what most people do, which with their, you know, enthusiast cars, is just this. They cruise, they might go get some, you know, dessert with their significant other. You might take it to a car show or two, and you might just do a couple pulls like I did. That's what most people do with their cars. They really don't, you know, and if you are going to do it, build it into anything serious, every modification in the world is out for this platform, and it's cheap. It's been done before, and it's cheap. But yeah, why did I buy one of these instead of a Corvette? Well, I've had C5s. I like C5s, and a perfectly running C5 versus one of these. The C5 handles a lot better. It is a little bit lighter. It definitely handles a lot better. And it may be a little bit quicker, especially at triple digits. You know, the aerodynamics do come into play, and the Corvette's more aerodynamic. But why I like these more than Corvettes is because of how it still feels like a muscle car and how connected everything is. You still have a throttle cable. You don't have that complicated torque tube setup, which, you know, changing a clutch is a serious chore in a C5. Changing a clutch in one of these, you can do it in 3 hours. So, you know, this is the simplicity. And there's no electronics. The C5 has all sorts of weird steering angle sensors, and mine used to not want to start all the time. I forget. It was something to do with the key communicating with the ECM. This has none of that. This is just a car. I mean, it's got a lock column from like a 70s square body. I mean, that's the thing, is it's almost like driving a resto mod, driving one of these, because you've got an LS1, you've got a T56, and you're in an ancient platform with, you know, with the modern front end on it, but it's still an ancient platform, and you can feel it. This just feels more like a muscle car. It throws you back more when you accelerate, you know, just the way it pitches and squats, and yeah, would it perform better if it didn't pitch and squat and roll so much? Yes, but it's kind of like the reason why people like Miatas. You could drive a Miata and hit the limits a lot easier. I mean, you could get to the limits in one of these, and you could slide it around and really have a good time. And it's predictable. There's no surprises because there is no electronic intervention. There is no, yes, this car has traction control, but the traction control, I'm telling you, it barely even works. It never, you know, it never upsets the party, okay? You have a really good feel and connection with everything going on in these, and that's what makes these cars so fun. The C5 is still connected. The C6 is even better, actually. A C6 is even stiffer and you know, improves upon a lot of things within, you know, the Corvette family. But it still removes another layer. This is just a very connected, fun to drive, and relatively inexpensive car. I don't think they're going to be inexpensive forever. People bought these and beat the living shit out of them, okay? They just did. And there's not a lot of clean ones left, and that's, I think, why there are a lot of clean Corvettes left. You know, a guy buys a Corvette, he puts it in his garage, he waxes it, and that's how it lives its life. I've bought Corvettes from people that they've never even, you know, went wide open throttle. It's like, why do you have a sports car? It's a different crowd with these. The people who like these cars, they modify the crap out of them. They drive them. I mean, it's just a bit of a different audience. So if you can find a Cherry Cream Puff like that, I recommend it. Or even if you can get a little rougher one like this, there's nothing wrong with that. But these were a performance bargain when they were new. I think they're still a performance bargain. I mean, the price of you could the joke used to be you bought one of these and you got the car for free. You got an LS1 and a T56 and you got the rest of the car for free. That was kind of always the running joke, and it still kind of stands true today. So yeah, that's just my little blurb on my F-bodies. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. And like I said, if you do get one of these, you're going to have to learn to live with things like the dash being cracked in 17 different places. This is, you know, peeling, but it's not loose or loud or dangerous. I've driven this thing. I live in Salt Lake City, and I've driven this to Yosemite. I've driven it to Mammoth and back. I've driven it to Yellowstone and back. I have no problem driving it, and if anything did ever break, it's the same parts that are on a Chevy truck. They're at every single Napa CarQuest out there. So there's something to be said about that in buying one of these. So yeah, long story short, there's a lot of reasons why I like these, and hopefully you guys like this video. I'm going to make videos on everything I own. The Suburban's next. Yeah, the Suburban's definitely next. I'm due a video on the Suburban, but yeah, one last look at my nice one, and you know, Beauty and the Beast here. So till next time, guys, thank you.